So I don't think that there's a runner on the planet that couldn't tell you which shoes these were just by looking at the profile. You know, those big AirPods up in the forefoot pretty much give them away. So the Nike Air Zoom AlphaFly Next Percent. Oh my goodness, what a long title. Now this is version 1, and these have been my go-to marathon shoe for this past year. Today's video, I thought it'd be fun for us to take a look back and see all the different changes, have a conversation about all of the different things that I have seen while training in these. Now, for the basis of comparison, I have two pairs. I have a pair, this pair that I used to train in, that have now been retired. They're no longer usable. So the time of death, 321. So 321 miles, they became unusable to me. But for basis of comparison, so any photos that I might put up before and after are going to be of the shoes that I used to race in. And I put 2 marathons in them, both the Detroit Marathon and the Boston Marathon. So they're not brand new, but they're still in their prime. And I think does give us a pretty good indication of some of those changes, that especially in the midsole and outsole, that kind of thing. So just so that you know, any pictures I put up before and after are going to be of a shoe that already has 60 miles in them. So they're not brand new, but again, they're still in their prime. They still have a race or two left in them, kind of like me. All right, so the first part of the video is going to be that comparison conversation about the changes, and then the second part of the video, and the reason I'm in my kitchen with a cutting board, is we're going to do an autopsy on the AlphaFly version 1 that's now dead to me. I'm really curious to see what, for example, those AirPods look like. So during that time, I'm going to attempt to remove the upper, and then I'm going to remove the AirPods. And then I'm also going to try to remove the ZoomX foam so that we can reveal the carbon fiber plate that's inside the shoe. All right, so let's talk about it. With the upper, the big changes that I've seen over the course, of that 300 miles is the upper. First, it has become much more pliable. When I first got these, it felt really, really coarse and rough to the touch. But now it's a little bit smoother. It's really broke down, however you want to think about it. And it's got a lot of stretch to it. It's really stretched out. More than I really kind of anticipated that it might, just be given on how rough the structure is when you first get them. I didn't think that I would have quite that much stretch, but it did stretch quite a bit. And also, the other piece that stretched is the eyelets themselves. So they become somewhat elongated over time. So much so that, I really had to, toward the end, cinch these together almost so that those eyelets were right on top of one another in order to feel locked in and secure in the shoe. The other piece that's notable is that when I first put these on and started running them for the very first time, I noticed that I had some pressure points, pain points. Not so much that you couldn't run in them, but it was definitely not a super comfortable upper. And that was basically a couple points on the eyelet chain, around the eyelet chain, kind of up here and then here. And so much so that when I would take my run socks off at the end of the run, you could see the red spots on my foot. That never changed. That stayed the same the entire time that I trained in these. So something just to note that, if you buy these and you push them on and you got some pressure points, you're probably gonna have to live with those pressure points for the life of the shoe, unfortunately. The other thing to note though is that, even though they did have a lot of stretch, there's no rips or tears. So it did hold up that way. The integrity, in terms of, it kind of falling apart, is really solid. It stretched, but it didn't give way. So I appreciate that. And then the padding around the heel collar, the bumper padding back here, that's fine. I honestly, there's not a big difference between 321 miles and 60 miles at this point. So that was fine. My heel was always comfortable. I didn't have any issues with the heel or around the heel collar in terms of comfort. The only real comfort issues, like I said, were up here in the forefoot of the shoe. Now let's take a look at the midsole, because here's where we've seen some pretty dramatic changes over time. Now there are just a ton of compression marks here back in the heel of the shoe, all the way up through to the forefoot. And some of this ZoomX foam has just wore right away. So it's missing a few chunks. For example, up here, you can see that it's not just scuffed up, but there's actually parts that have just completely worn away. After about 100 miles, you really start to notice the breakdown in that ZoomX foam. And I think I mentioned maybe in a previous video that I would anticipate being able to race in these for up to about 100 miles. And that prediction, I think, has held true. They still feel really comfortable. I've got another race in my fresher pair that I have, but that's about it. I probably wouldn't run more than one more marathon in them. And then at that point, they would be moved to the training slot. I do want to mention though that I have 321 miles in these, but I overran them, so that's something to be cautious about. So let's flip them over, and I'll show you why. So the ZoomX foam does start to break down, so you're losing a little bit of that pop or cushion that you get in the heel, but not so much that you can't run in them. So that's not the reason that these are no longer usable. The reason that they're no longer usable is because I wore the outsole right off of these shoes, and I was on a threshold run. I don't remember exactly the distance, but I was running a pretty decent pace. I think I was running around a 7:30 minute mile, and that only comes to mind because my goal pace for my last marathon was a 7:40 minute mile. And so I was bumping it up just a notch for that threshold run. And so at some point during that run, I had wore the remainder part of the outsole material down so much that it popped that air unit up in the forefoot of the shoe. And as a result, I ended up having some tendonitis that flared up, and that was a real bummer. So just a cautionary tale that if you plan to get every single mile that you want to get out of this, and I understand that because they cost $275 unless you can find them on sale. If you can find them on sale, that's awesome. But if you're paying retail, $275 is a lot of money. So you want to get every single mile that you can out of them. You could pay the price unless you pay real close attention. So the thing that I would look at when you start getting up past that 200 miles, and I'm going to say 200 miles, is start taking real notice of the outsole material. So when it starts to wear down, I would probably retire them, this next time around. So the newer shoes that I have, when they go into my training rotation, I'm going to be taking a real close look at that. In fact, I've set a reminder on my, both on Garmin, I guess. You can put how many miles that you want to have on those shoes before it lets you know that you've reached that, and you should be really paying attention to them at about 200 miles. That way, I can be sure that I don't repeat my mistakes. I don't want that to happen again, because it did cause me some problems to run that marathon. There was only like 10 days after that happened. So just a cautionary tale. If you want to get every mile out of them, that's awesome. I do too. Just really pay attention to that outsole material, because I think that's where you could run into trouble. Because, let's face it, if the ZoomX foam gives way, that's not that big a deal. It's just not as cushioned. But if one of these air units pop up in the forefoot of the shoe, it's going to put you in a different run position, and you could overload, in my case, the tendon, for example, and cause you some problems. So, all right, enough about that. So the outsole, both up in the forefoot of the shoe, has worn down to the point that it breached the integrity of that air unit. But it's also wore right off in the back of the shoes as well. Those two strips that they have, they're just flat now. There's nothing there in the midsection of this side of that strip left, and it slowly kind of wore away, and you can see where it has really chewed up that ZoomX foam. Overall, I would say, you can expect to get maybe 100 race miles out of these. I would really start looking at 200 miles plus, keeping a real close eye on the outsole material to make sure that you don't overrun in the shoes like I did. I suspect, though, that you're going to be able to get somewhere around that 250 to 300 miles. Now, 300 might be pushing it. I'm a smaller runner, by the way. And I know that size and how you use a shoe does matter in the longevity of the shoe and the durability. I I think on my license, and I tell people I'm about 5'7", but in reality, it's probably 5'5". And I weigh about 135 pounds, somewhere in that neighborhood. And I'm typically a mid to 4 foot foot striker. So I use these to do all of my different training in when I was training for the marathon. So I didn't use them for every single workout, obviously, but I used them for all of the different workouts. So, easy run, long run, speed work, everything. And they performed really well. So they're still a favorite of mine, but now I'm a little bit cautious of maybe the tech breaking down. So I am looking at other possibilities for my next marathon. In fact, I just got the Saucony Endorphin Pro 3 in. I know that she's been out a while, but I haven't run in them, so they're new to me. So I'll be talking about those here on the channel here real soon. But there's really not any other tech that could go wrong in those. It's carbon fiber plate. Sure, the plate could break, but that's probably not likely to happen. Unlike the AlphaFly, that you could pop the area up here in the forefoot of the shoe, and that could cause you problems. And I have heard tales of the Adidas or Adios Pro 3 having some of those energy rods break on people. So that hasn't happened to me, and I've got a couple 100 miles in those shoes as well. So sometimes I'm starting to think that maybe the less complicated the tech in the shoe, that might be something to consider for sure. All right, so I'm going to get to the fun part now, and that's going to be giving this shoe an autopsy. So I don't know why, you guys, but I am just a little bit nervous about cutting into these shoes. I think you spend that kind of money, $275 on a pair of shoes, it kind of pains you a little bit to cut them up, even if they're no longer usable. But here we go. All right, so I'm going to start with the upper. And for that, I'm going to try to use a box cutter first and see if I can get this off somewhat cleanly. We'll start right up here at the toe box. Oh, goodness. Oh, it's kind of cutting right into that Zoom X foam a little bit. I'm going to try to follow the contours the best that we can. Oh, gosh, this pains me. Do a quick check, make sure I'm cutting up the right pair. Wouldn't that have been a bummer? All right, so get around this. Boy, this heel counter is a little tight back here. A little tough, as it probably should be. Try to get it all the way around first, and I'll go back and try to get loose the parts that I wasn't able to get the first time around. Trying to be careful not to cut myself. Oh, question of the day. Do we cut through this? I think I'm going to just cut right through that material. The midsole, not midsole, the what do we call it, footbed, it's kind of getting in the way there a little bit. Woo! Oh, it's coming. Yeah, it's coming. Oh, there it is. Oh my goodness, that is super lightweight. I'm going to put it on my scales and just see how lightweight it is. See how much of that. I think these were, oh gosh, really taxing my memory now. I think these were about 7.1 ounces when they were all intact. So let's kind of put this, let's put this up on the scales. Hopefully I can get it all on there. 1.5 ounces is what the upper weighs with the laces. Well, maybe at some point I'll take the laces out, but 1.5 ounces, pretty lightweight upper. Again, it's got that bit of a stretch to it, over time, but as you can see, there are no holes in it. So again, it held up pretty good that way. So 7.1 ounces for the upper. So if I put the rest of it on here, or 7.1 ounces for the entire shoe, 1.5 ounces there. This comes in at 5.6 ounces. Let me reset this just in case it's set and funny on my cutting board. Make sure I get it as accurate of a reading as I can. 5.6 ounces is what this came in at on my scales. All right. Oh, looks a little funky, doesn't it? Looks really funky. Okay, so now I'm going to set this aside. Gosh, I don't know the best way to get these air units. This is really what I'm interested in checking out. I think I'm going to use the fillet knife because it's a super thin blade, and I think I might be able to get up there a little better because I think this blade on that's going to be a little too thick. I'll start on the one side and see if I can't. There's that one. Let's see here. How best to get in there? You know what? I could probably just follow along. The same thing. All right, there's that part. And we're just going to keep right on going. Oh, there. Oh, wow. That is not what I expected at all. I'm going to get some good pictures of this later, but this is like, it's not at all what I expected. I kind of thought that these would be like pillars of plastic or something in there, but instead it is like cloth. It's like a foam. It feels kind of like something you might use to dust around your house in. That is crazy. I never would have expected that. Huh. Wow. Pretty cool, though. There must be a reason for it, but that is pretty cool. All right. I don't know how much of that plate, so let's just kind of set that aside. Let's see if I can get any more of this off that plate. Not so much. Well, I guess a little bit. But ZoomX foam is pretty funky. That does got some squish to it for sure. All right, let's see if we can get the heel off of this baby. I don't know, man. That plate is something. Now, I understand that Nike fine tunes the plates based on the shoe size. So obviously, you know, if you got a bigger foot, you're likely to be a bigger runner, and that plate's going to be a little bit thicker for you than for someone who's my size, wearing a US men's size 9. That'll be different than somebody that might be wearing a US men's size 12, for example. So bigger runners, bigger plate, smaller runners, a little bit thinner plate. That's my understanding anyway. Let's see if we can get this up. I don't know if I'm going to be able to follow the contour of that plate or not. This might not be, this might not be possible. If this takes too long, I will try to edit it down some. If nothing else, I want to see what that ZoomX foam looks like as we cut into that. Man, my cutting board's sliding all over the place, you guys. Well, not a great job, but I did expose it back here. It's hard maybe to see there, but so this is what that ZoomX foam looks like. It is still super squishy. Oh my gosh. All right. So the death of a super shoe, complete with Autopsy. Again, the time of death, 321 miles. And it was a result of the outsole wearing down, and not necessarily the ZoomX foam, although that did break down, considerably. It's definitely noticeable, but still it would have been runnable had it not been for that. But the outsole is really the Achilles heel of this shoe, at least it was for me. All right, I hope you guys had a little bit of fun with me as I did an autopsy on the Nike Air Zoom AlphaFly Next Percent version 1. I had a lot of fun in this shoe, a lot of good memories. I think if I were to give a eulogy, it would definitely be one of just positive, so much fun. We had a great time together. All right. Hey, thanks for making it to the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed making it for you. As always, run tall, run strong, be kind to one another. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on Run Tall with Tim.